Today we are glad to have a great friend and from Georgia, from Atlanta, Tom Chiflet. All I'm going to say that he's a former wrestling coach, but I'm going to let him tell you, very quickly, what his background is and how he relates to wrestling. Tom, welcome here. I just want to know, how do you start in wrestling and how do you end up, you know, going through a long period?
Yeah, it's been a long it's been a long period of time transitioning into different things, from an athlete to a wrestling coach, to retiring from coaching and getting into a different industry, but still trying to stay active.
How many years did you wrestle and how many years did you coach?
So I started wrestling probably when I was around 7, and competed all the way through college, and did some freestyle after that, and then got into coaching and coached the college level athletes for about 16 years.
Which college or colleges do you?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to coach at Georgia State, Cornell, University of North Carolina, Greensboro. That's where actually I became a head coach, and then my last position was the head coach at Hofstra University.
Now, you no longer, a wrestler. I mean, you're not actively competing. You're no longer coaching, but on your new phase, this new phase of your life. I mean, I noticed that you like to maintain a physically active lifestyle. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean.
And what did you try?
Yeah.
What have you tried
Yeah.
to do? Did you try to emulate those days when you were in high school and college, that level of intensity and training, to do it now that you are in your 40s?
Yeah. Yeah, I've slowed down quite a bit, but you still have that competitive drive. And, when I decided to, stop coaching and get into something different as far as a career, I still had that competitiveness, and I got into, the CrossFit movement, and I was a part of a couple boxes. And quite honestly, it was great because I was able to really understand and learn about the Olympic movements, where you're doing ground-based movements. And I had some great coaching. There's no question. I had some great coaching.
You had, basically the motivation was to, bring back that level of intensity because you felt that it will get you in shape, keep you in shape. And even though you have great coaching, what happened?
Well, I think, you come to realize, especially at my age, that it's not as sustainable. I mean, it gets to the point where, picking up the Olympic bar and doing some of those ground-based movements, trying to train triple extension, with an Olympic bar, it's just difficult. When you're trying to put it on your back, and, obviously a lot of that has contributed to my training as a wrestler for so many years that it's not something I really can do anymore.
How the experience, doing the Purmotion workouts compare to your wrestling days and your and now that and before, you can hear what you were doing, all the training protocols.
Yeah. No, I mean, this has been a breath of fresh air for me because, again, I have an Olympic bar and bumper plates in my basement that I, used to enjoy using, but this allows me. This is a wrestling playground. I mean, this is a place where I can come. I can now do the movements that I learned through CrossFit, the triple extension. I can train those movements, and I can get up the next day, or I can feel great that evening because I'm doing things a little bit differently. I'm training.
What about the intensity factor? And the workout that you have experienced here. I mean, those intensity workouts. I mean, does it remind you? What I like to call it wrestling mode intensity, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting your heart rate up. You're working hard. You're hitting. You're hitting muscles and muscle groups that typically you would not hit and this is like if I was doing a CrossFit, I'm not hitting some of these muscles that I'm hitting in here, and which is contributing to my fatigue and also getting my heart rate up. So now I'm trying to function with my heart rate elevated, and I'm trying to load weight and move it. that's a perfect match for me. That's a perfect match for wrestling.
So what about the movements that you do at that intensity here? I mean, how different these movements are that you have experienced to allow you to maintain a pretty high level of intensity. And again, this is, the workouts that you have done, they're not like 20 minutes or, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You've been averaging about an hour, give and take. But what's been different, or what's been your experience, going through the movements that we do here at that high intensity, and how do you think, first, how you feel next day, and how do you see something like the Purmotion training protocol being able to help, wrestlers or wrestling strength and conditioning programs?
Well, when you do the exercises, number one, you're concentrating on the exercise, you're concentrating on the movement, and you definitely are noticing the muscles that you hadn't been hitting in the past. That's number one. Number two, being a wrestler, but in any athletic sport, it's ground-based. So my feet are on the ground. I'm in a unilateral or bilateral stance. I'm pushing, I'm pulling, I'm exploding. So I'm simulating, and using muscles that I would be using if I was wrestling, if I was in combat. And again, I think it applies to any sport, but I'm just talking about wrestling because that's really what I know. That's why I say, hey, this is a wrestling playground, because if I keep my feet on the ground, if I'm in a unilateral stance and I'm pulling and I'm pushing and I'm loading weight and I'm doing it joint friendly, where it's going to allow me to recover faster.
So you've been engaged to a lot of joint friendly movements.
Absolutely. I mean, again, if I think about the dual renegades, okay, that you have here, and I take an Olympic bar. So I'm taking an Olympic bar that I was using, and I got it out in front of me, and I'm training triple extension. That's 2 movements with an Olympic bar. All right, and it's taxing. It's taxing on your joints. There's no question. I know the difference. When I use the dual renegades, I'm keeping my wrists neutral, keeping my elbows down where I'm not straining my shoulders, and I'm also I'm loading weight, and I'm hitting that triple extension at a different force vector, as you would say, a force vector that's not compressing my spine, and it's more joint friendly. I've been able to do these workouts, 2 in a row, and get up, pop up out of the morning, and I'm ready for the next one. And again, I'm in my later 40s now, and it's just a.
So you mentioned 2 things. Number one, that just popped. Number one, you mentioned angles, or hitting muscles in angles that maybe you haven't seen in other programs, but might be relevant for the sport like wrestling. For example, movements that not only that doesn't really rely entirely on vertical axial gravitational forces, but it also incorporates forces, we call it here frictional, as frictional horizontal forces, and how those 2 forces, gravitational and frictional, works together, to produce force, and it's a requirement in the sport of wrestling. I mean, you cannot wrestle without gravitational and frictional forces.
That's right.
Working together. But like you mentioned, like movements that are not taxing on the joint, it's a big factor why next morning you call me. Actually, you wake me up every morning saying I have no pain, but I mean it's this soreness, that joint pain. So
That's why I said it's a breath of fresh air. I mean, again, I'm talking wrestling. I think about the different moves in wrestling, and I know how difficult it is to get on the mat and wrestle with somebody. And when I grab the Cyclone 100, I got my feet on the ground, and I'm creating friction, and I'm pulling. I'm incorporating not just pulling with my back, but I'm incorporating a lot of different muscles, which is what we're trying to simulate. We're trying to, make it athletic lifting.
So to wrap this up, if you were, if you had a chance to talk to the wrestling coach and his strength and conditioning staff, what would be your best advice for them,
Yeah.
about pure motion and how pure motion can help them, assuming they're looking for better ways to improve
Right.
the wrestlers. What
Well,
would you
everybody
tell
that
them?
I have spoken to, I think number one, which is most important to me, is that it's not, hey, we just have equipment in the gym and we're going to use it. We're going to start, you know, doing some exercises. There's a means to the madness here. There's a methodology that, that we're correcting my technique. When I'm doing an exercise, if I don't have my hands the right way, it's getting corrected to make it joint friendly. That's really important to me. Again, at my age, but I'm thinking about a wrestler who's going through practices every day. If we're educating them on, how, joint friendly exercises, movements that are more sustainable, that's important to me. That's something that we need to get across to everybody. So it goes beyond the equipment for me and how we can help the sport of wrestling, or really any sport. And then I just think about, you have your own wrestling room. What tools can we incorporate from Purmotion, or what I incorporate into my wrestling room? That after practice, because you always try to get the edge. You get done with practice, I want to do an extra 10 minutes of conditioning, because, I want to be a national champ. And I think about all the different tools in here that I could be incorporating in just the wrestling room. Now, you go down to the strength and conditioning side, and with your program, I would highly recommend that the strength coaches are communicating, with someone like you, George, to help them with their program. Hey, what are some of the gaps in my program, my current program, with my wrestlers that maybe I'm not doing? That you can look at their program and you can say, well, you're not training this, this force vector, or this, this orbit that, this is wrestling right here, and you're maybe not doing that with your program. Let's try to incorporate that. And that may not be a piece of equipment. That may be just some other exercises and things that they already have in their facility. So, if they can start implementing some of these tools, I highly recommend that they look into it, because I see a huge benefit to the athletes, to the wrestlers, MMA, because it just makes total sense to me. And I've done a number of workouts now that I just see the application. I really know that this is something that.
So there's an opportunity based on your experience that not only you can incorporate, movements that are joint friendly, movement that, it doesn't sacrifice strength or power, but movements and programming that can not only, get the best out of you when you are competing at the highest level, but you can also have a life after you retire and still keep, being physically active.
Yes.
Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've mentioned the word sustainable, and that's a word that I think really applies to Purmotion and the methodology that you have. So, this is, again, for the coaches and for the strength coaches that are out there. And it's funny because the industry that I'm in right now, I speak to the athletic directors and the strength coaches and the coaches individually, and there are methods out there. They're trying to do a lot of these things, but this is the hidden gem, in my opinion, because of the methodology. It's not, hey, we're just making a piece of equipment and let's start utilizing everything that you've designed and incorporated is incorporated into the program.
So you're saying that there are coaches, athletic directors that they recognize that there's probably there's got to be something out there that is better than the current system.
Yeah, things are evolving. You brought it up in the beginning of the conversation. I think in the strength and conditioning industry world, things are evolving. We're trying to find, and it's great. I think it's great. Strength coaches try to find the best way to maximize an athlete's potential. How do we do that? And so they're incorporating different functional movements. this is the one that I would recommend, you know, again, through my career as a wrestler, as a wrestling coach, as someone who now is just a person who loves to be, you know, try to stay in shape, still has that competitive drive, loves a hard workout, and wants to still help other athletes or people. This is a great solution. I mean, there's no question.
Well, Tom, I appreciate for your visit.
Yeah.
And I hope,
I'll be back.
I know you'll be back. And I hope some of the coaches, you know, got motivated and excited to reach out.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can help them.
All right. Thank you.
There you go.